about some of these, high risk trades that the Detroit Pistons have been associated with. Kawhi Leonard, Kyrie Irving, they have been associated with some very, very high risk trades where, you start talking about Kyrie, you start talking about Kawhi Leonard. I haven't seen one for Paul George. I'll try to remember put it on screen, but I'm gonna do a short on the Paul George one. And you hear these. I mean, people may even throw in Joel Embiid in there. I've heard, just in passing. The thing about it is when you start talking about these high risk trades, which can bring high reward in championship, because Kawhi got championship pedigree, Kyrie got championship pedigree. You start to look at, and even you can throw Lauri Markkanen in there. And when I looked at Trey Murphy, you got to remember a lot of these guys, you can't bank on to play 65, 70, 80 games no more. Most of these guys have had injury histories, if not all of them. Trey Murphy numbers ain't that great neither. When you start talking about, he going to miss about 20 games a year. That could have been a tankathon some years in New Orleans. So, Lauri Markkanen ups and down with injury. So there's a lot of risk pretty much involved in some of these trades, in my opinion. A lot of risk. And, you got to ask yourself, when you hear these monstrous trades where they want all these 3 people, 3 players, 2 picks for this guy, and you just thinking like, I mean, this guy coming off a knee injury, this guy's been injured most of his career. Do I want to mortgage the farm for damaged goods? And you heard, and I did a video on it. I don't know when y'all gonna see it. I'm probably gonna post it today. I'll probably see this down the line. You hear them talking about they want to draft a move up for Yaxel from Michigan. That make a lot of sense rather than you go pay this high priced amount for, Lauri Markkanen, or this high price amount for Trey Murphy, because guess what? You got to pay him. They got big contracts. You got to pay him. And with Yaxel, he's seasoned. I mean, you keep Tobias Harris around. He's seasoned. With that NBA size body, being a senior, being mature, going through ups and downs throughout his career, he can shoot it. He can block it. He can drive it to the lane. He can rebound at a good clip. You're expecting him to come in and contribute right away. Him and Tobias can man that position. You expecting him to contribute right away. So that's a risk worth taking. And guess what? You ain't got to pay him all that cap money. It's going to take some draft capital. And I think you're fine with that. I think Golden State, they will take some of the veterans, and you can fill that void. And then now, with whatever you got left over, now you can talk about putting somebody next to Cade Cunningham. You can talk about going to find somebody off the bench who can go get you a bucket. Got a little bit more room to play with, but they risk. And when you make decisions in the moment and don't think about the future, that's a problem. We make impulsive decisions and we got to deal with the consequences. The consequences are always not bad. They're not always bad. But when you make a decision like this and you make a decision to throw in Beef Stew, Isaiah Stewart, you start making a decision to throw away, move on from Jalen Duren, just know they can go somewhere else and figure it out and prosper. Look at the Clippers with SGA. Got rid of him. For Paul George, because Kawhi wanted them, thought they was going to win a championship. And SGA ended up bringing the championship to OKC Thunder. Just imagine the feeling when they made the trade with the LA Lakers. And they traded away the number 1 pick, and that ended up being James Worthy. They made that. Yeah, the Clippers traded the number 1 pick that ended up being the number 1 pick to the Los Angeles Lakers. That's how they got James Worthy. So when we make these decisions, they have to be calculated throughout in sports and throughout life. And sometimes shit happen when you just got to make a decision, and you got to rob Peter to pay Paul. And we all live in that era. Believe it or not, it's people in Hollywood, people in sports. That's robbing Peter to pay Paul just to stay above the poverty line. And that but you got to understand, in the moment, the Pistons can't afford, in my opinion, the Pistons can't afford to make the mistake that the Thunder did, or get some damaged goods, and they can't perform at a high level. They can't afford that, especially if you giving up a lot. So when you start talking about Kyrie or Kawhi or really, they not you or Kevin Durant, or if you on that team, or you talking about that. In my opinion, sorry. In my opinion, you can't afford, you can't afford, I lost my work keys. I don't even know where they're at. You can't afford to make that grave mistake. They get here and they get injured. They get here and you see what Kevin Durant did for the Houston Rockets. You can't afford to make that mistake. So you already can't afford to make those mistakes, man. So you just can't afford to. Can't afford to. Can't afford to. So it's gonna be interesting. The type of risk that they willing to take. Because getting Yaxel Lindenborg, guess what? If you believe in them, wow, you can move, you ain't gotta move for those guys. Save you some money. You go find you a couple guards, one that can get it off the bench, one that can get it next to Cade Cunningham. You can move on. You can move on. So it's no guarantee that a Kyrie gonna work, a Kawhi wanting to come here, or if it's gonna work. They can come here and it could be over with 30 in their mid-30s and coming up with it and have a lot of injury history. It could be in theory, it sounds good. You do need experience. You do need seasoning. Need the seasoning in the sauce. But like I said, there's other, trades that can be high, high risk. I mean, high reward, low risk. When you start talking about Booker, that's high risk, high reward. But you start talking about Levine, low risk, high reward, and not that much capital coming back. So it's going to be interesting to see how they move and groove. But hey, let me know what you girls and guys think. Check out Detroit Piston Talk playlist. Find me on X, Facebook, Kick, Twitch, Instagram, Spotify, Anchor, Cash App, Venmo, PayPal. Appreciate the love, support. Let me know what you girls and guys think in the comment section. You can literally find me everywhere. The link tree. Find me everywhere in the comment section. I mean, the description piece.